Amen.
At this time, we will have our first Bible class of the year.
Well,
Topic, Rebuilding God's House. Talk by our instructor, Founder Takuma Lumumba. Let's give him a hand. Amen.
All right. Let me begin, if I didn't get you at Chaser, saying Happy New Year.
Amen.
Yeah, it is a new year. So this is about what, the third Sunday of the new year.
Wow.
I figure by now, most everybody reneged on their New Year's resolution. And you know how that go. My New Year's resolution is not to make New Year's resolutions. I'm like, what's January 1st going to be any different than the other 364 days of the year? When I know I'm drinking too much and not eating right, that one day ain't going to change.
No, sir.
So if you're going to change, you're going to change. Not just January 1st, but it's an all-year process.
well,
Before we get into our lesson today, I just got to say, our Congressman showed socket to the so-called President of the United States this week. Ain't that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John got a little fight still left in him.
oh yeah, you got a little fight.
You know Trump, he just turned around and socked right back at us. Say, you niggas get y'all act together. I ain't studying y'all.
Right.
You know he's talking directly to us because we are in the heart of the 5th Congressional District.
Well,
So that was directly aimed at us. We're going to move on into our lesson dealing with the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. We will cover both Ezra and Nehemiah because they were both joint workers and motivators in the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem and its temple. Ezra worked primarily on the temple, while Nehemiah, a little later, directed the restructuring of the wall. The importance of a specific place, a treasured or a sacred place, is crucial for holding and banding groups together. Mainstream Christianity emphasizes the so-called miracles of Jesus and his redemptive death upon the cross as the most significant part of Christianity. The Bible, however, is a history book of a people struggling to be free from others surrounding nations and groups. This is the most significant part of the Bible. With this understanding, one can now read the scripture through different lenses and exact meaning and substance that was unable to be revealed before.
that's right.
The importance of the city of Jerusalem is one such example. The holy city became the black nation Israel's point of synthesis throughout all its ordeals, whether good or bad. For us here at the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, the declared living remnant of the lost black nation Israel,
Well,
we have signs and symbols that bind us together as a church nation. The most significant being the Black Madonna and Child. Thus, our churches are called the shrines of the Black Madonna.
right.
They are our holy city. They are our Jerusalem gates and Jerusalem wall.
That's right.
The Babylonian exile left the nation Israel scattered, shattered, and in disarray. Before we delve into the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, we must first look at what had been the events that placed them and others away from Jerusalem. In the early 700s BC, the Assyrians were conquerors of the Mideastern region. They beat the Egyptians and now controlled what we call the Holy Land. Realizing the reputation of the nation Israel to be hard set on returning to their God, especially in times of crisis or defeat and ordeals like, such as those, they decided to disband the nation Israel. They decided to end or try to end the nation Israel.
My Lord.
They dispersed 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel throughout their immense conquered lands. Thus, the term, the 10 lost tribes of Israel. The Babylonians who were under their rule eventually grew strong and powerful and conquered the Assyrians in wars ranging from 601 BC to 586 BC. During all of this conquering, the black nation Israel was caught up in the middle. And they were always kind of on the short end of each war, on the losing end of each war. And they were passed back and forth and back, as servants and subjects of those powerful nations. The Babylonians similarly deported many members of the black nation Israel. That deportation, however, was back to Babylon. Also, they deported only the upper class of the nation Israel, leaving the destroyed and almost burnt city of Jerusalem to be led by weak appointed leaders.
Have mercy.
I want to start with, get someone to jump to 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 13 and 14. To give us a little background when King Nebuchadnezzar encountered the black nation Israel.
The letter carried off all the treasures of the temple of Yahweh and the treasures of the royal palace, and broke up all the golden furnishings that Solomon king of Israel had made for the sanctuary of Yahweh, and as Yahweh had foretold. He carried off all Jerusalem into exile, all the nobles and all the notables. 10,000 of these were exiled, with all the blacksmiths and metal workers. Only the poorest people in the country were left behind.
All right. So we see the nation Israel was dispersed and broken up. The warring of nations, however, continued when Persia and Babylon fought. Babylon lost, and again we see the nation Israel subservient now to the Persians under the rule of King Cyrus and King Artaxerxes. It's under the Persian conquest of Babylon that we find Ezra and Nehemiah. So now we all kind of up to speed on this story of what's going on, all right? Okay.
Yeah, we got the history.
Yeah, so this is where Ezra and Nehemiah find themselves. Let's first look at Ezra's charge. King Cyrus of Persia instructed Ezra to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem.
Well,
He provides Ezra with the materials and funds to get the job done. And we may ask, why would he do something like that? Well, if we consider the worldview of what is happening in the region, one would surmise because of the many conflicts, ruling nations needed incoming funds to maintain power and also want to try to reduce unnecessary enemies. So don't get carried away thinking, the Persians, man, they were so nice oppressors. Real good. No. It's more a business decision.
Business, yeah.
Making a sound business decision. A rebuilt temple with taxations coming in increases the coffers of Persia.
Yes.
And also King Cyrus, unlike many other conquerors, had a policy position of letting those who were conquered continue to worship their gods and carry on life as close to normal as possible.
well,
Such policies reduced the chances of open rebellion. In fact, in 1879, archaeologists discovered what is called the Cyrus cylinder. And You have a copy of it in your handout. The Cyrus cylinder, discovered back in 1879. And if I could get someone to read in the bulletin, just under the picture, what King Cyrus had to say about itself.
In the inscription cited below, Cyrus the Great recounts his peaceful conquest of the city of Babylon and his plan for restoring the exiles to their original lands. He also reveals his policy on restoring the religious artifacts and sanctuaries of conquered people.
I'm going to read what's actually on the cylinder, part of what's on the cylinder. Cyrus says, "When I entered Babylon as a friend and established my seat of government there in the palace of the king, Marduk," which was the Babylonian god, "caused the people to love me, and I worshipped him daily. My troops kept order in the streets of Babylon and throughout the land of Sumer and Akkad. In Babylon, I ended the practice of forced labor and helped rebuild their ruined houses. All the kings in the entire world, from the upper to the lower sea, those seated on thrones or other types of dwellings, as well as the tent dwellers from the land in the west, brought me tribute and kissed my feet in Babylon.
Well,
To all three regions, as far as Assur and Susa are God, I returned the images of their gods to their sanctuaries, which had been in ruins for a long period of time. I now established for them permanent sanctuaries. I also gathered all the former inhabitants of these places and returned them to their homes." So this is Cyrus's policy after conquest. Now, when you look at the scriptures and you read in the scriptures in Nehemiah and Ezra, they'll talk about how God moved King Cyrus to, send them back and rebuild and things like that.
well,
But that's the beauty when you control your history and you write your history. You talk about your God being powerful and moving this evil conqueror to be, forgiving and sending you back to rebuild your temple. But again, that's the Israelites' take on how they want to present their history, when in reality, it's totally something different. Totally
Well,
something different.
well,
So that's when you're looking at the Bible and you're reading the Bible, you just can't read the Bible for what you see in the Bible.
that's right.
You've got to understand what is going on around and what is taking place in other parts of the world and other views and what other people are writing. Because it wasn't just people that wrote the Bible, there are other historical documents going on at the same time to give us a clearer picture.
Amen.
But Ezra uses this opportunity to begin to put his people back together. Exile has taken not only a physical toll on the structures of Israel, but also a spiritual destruction. Ezra works on both of these items. First, with a returning group of about 40,000 exiles, the temple repairs begin. And it took about 70 years for them to actually rebuild the temple, caused by some delays, people not wanting them to do it, enemies trying to stop them from doing it. But eventually the temple structure is restored. And Ezra now has a structure that the people can come to and reconnect with their traditions and way of worship. Rituals that had been forsaken are being reinstated. The city is still in rubble, but now at least the rebuilt temple spreads some hope to the nation Israel. The completion of God's work is overwhelming joy. Say that again. The completion of God's work is overwhelming joy.
That's right.
Ezra 3, 11 and 12, if I could get someone to read those verses for me. Ezra 3, 1 and 12. 11 and 12.
With praise and thanksgiving, They sing to the Lord. He is good, his love toward Israel endures forever. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the older priests and Levites and family heads, who had seen the former temple, wept aloud when they saw the foundation of this temple being laid, while many others shouted for joy.
All right. Amen on that. So we see that the temple is not as fancy and nice as it once was, but they see some restoration taking place. And
Well.
they remember how it used to look. And some are shouting for joy, and some are weeping. If you have not witnessed just how beautiful our institutions have been, sometimes it might be hard to understand the deep emotions that go when those standards are not met.
Well,
Say, some member of the church may stroll through a Keeperland Park and they may make a mental note, dang, the grass kind of high over there. And someone else, like Sister Okolo, she might walk by there and say, what the hell? It looks like a damn jungle out there. What's going on out here in Keeperland Park?
tell it, brother.
But the fact is, if we come together,
Amen.
trim it up, fix it up, and it starts looking good, your
Amen.
insides warm up, your chest starts expanding, and we know that, guess what? We done something good here. We've done something good.
That's right.
We've got our own Nehemiah,
Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
hard-working brother. And
be working too.
you know how it was on chases, in most chases. How we had to cross our legs and climb up the steps, trying to get to the restroom, try to hold them after getting all that drinking, trying to get over to the shrine. With all that in it now.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Okay. Got a little something going on. A little restoration going on.
Well,
You know about the Legacy Center was a few years back a pile of junk, so to speak, couldn't hardly get in the door.
mm-hmm.
And then, guess what?
Well,
Now we have something and somewhere where you can come back and lay back and relax and take pride in being a black Christian nationalist.
Amen.
Restoring the temple is not some historical event to read and marvel about. We have our own temple today that needs rebuilding in some places, that needs facelift in some places. And guess what? It's not going to get done kneeling down, praying for restoration, praying for modification, praying for beautification. Now, if you just insist on getting down on your knees, take a bucket and a scrub brush. Get out here, pray and scrub.
Amen.
Pray and scrub. And guess what? Your prayers will be answered. Connection brings compassion, which moves one to action. Nehemiah 1, verses 2 to 4, if I can get someone to read those passages for me.
In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, "Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire."
my Lord.
While I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven.
Well,
Thank you. All right. So here we see Nehemiah. He's wondering about what's happening with those that have been left behind in Jerusalem.
well,
Here's a man in good standing with his oppressor, living in the palace with one of the most powerful and wealthiest men in the world as his cupbearer. Yet he is struck with grief and sounds like really borderline depression regarding the state of his people and country.
well,
Keep in mind, those left behind were the poorest of the nation Israel. But he didn't cop an attitude like, oh, too bad for them niggas if they had got some education. They could have been transported with us, if they had some skills and something to deal with. They wouldn't be in the shape that they in. You know how we go.
yeah,
Never mind that you're still oppressed. If I can be somewhat comfortable in my oppression, I'm cool with that. I got my nice nameplate. I'm in charge of master's department of making them a little more money. Never mind, I don't control anything.
Well,
Never mind, I'm at his beck and command.
well,
Never mind, I'm going to take the first bullet when something goes wrong.
well,
Nehemiah remains connected and concerned about his people,
well,
all of his people.
all of his people.
Sensing that something is wrong with Nehemiah, King Artaxerxes prods him to find out what is going on. Divine discontent cannot be hidden, nor should it be. If I can get someone to read Nehemiah 2, verses 2 and 3 for me. Nehemiah 2, verses 2 and 3.
And the king said to me, why is your face sad, seeing you are not sick? This is nothing else but sadness of the heart. Then I was very much afraid. I said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my fathers' suffers, lies waste, and his gates have been destroyed by fire?
All right. Again, Nehemiah is more concerned with where he came from rather than where he is and what status he has achieved.
Well,
You know how our people are, trying to deny their roots. You can be from Walk-Fast, Alabama.
okay.
Once you left, you deny you ever knew of the place. Somebody asks you, what part of Alabama you from? I'm from Birmingham. you know, I ain't one of them country bumpers. You cannot deny your people and then say that you love your people.
Well,
You're giving lip service when you should be working hard for your people.
well,
If we say we are agents for God, then we need to act like we are agents for God.
that's right.
God's agents stand up in the forefront.
Well,
All that represents God should be reflected in how it looks. Does it look God-like? Does it look all-powerful? If not, then we should make it so.
well,
Our discontent must move us to action. If you are discontent with our physical look, then you need to act on it. If you are discontent with us not being more in the forefront of what's going on in the world and in our local communities, then we need to act on it. After the king has a discussion with what Nehemiah wants, the king supports his efforts and sponsors whatever he needs, including soldiers. And Nehemiah goes to Jerusalem. And once he arrives, he secretly and quietly at night surveys the destruction of the city. He found the place still pretty much messed up. He told no one what he was up to. You know how it is. Folks will try to stop you before you get started. Especially when they know you're doing something that they should have been doing themselves.
well,
Your success would be a threat to them. You force them to move out of their comfort zone. You challenge them to do more than they thought could be done or more than they wanted to do.
Mhm.
Wow.
Identify the problem, analyze the problem, attack the problem.
Well,
You get someone to read Nehemiah 2, verse 12 for me, please. Nehemiah 2, verse 12.
And so I reached Jerusalem and stayed there for 3 days. Then I rose in the night with a few other men, not having told anyone what work God had inspired me to do for Jerusalem, and having no animal with me but my own mouth.
Okay, I think I gave you the wrong verse. Nehemiah 2:12. Let me read what I got on my paper. Then said I unto them, ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come and let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach.
All right.
It's probably one of my favorite verses out of these two books, so I'm going to read it again. Then said I unto them,
Well,
ye see the distress we are in,
Amen.
Come on now.
how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no more be a reproach. We have a divine obligation
Yes.
to take care of God's house.
that's right, absolutely.
That's the way it looks. The way that it looks reflects how we feel about God's house
Yes.
and what it represents. How can we say this is sacred ground and we take no pride in how it looks?
Well,
We
well.
want to praise and boast about the unveiling of the Black Madonna 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's all well and good.
That's all.
But what about the Madonna as she's hanging on the wall looking down day in and day out?
Amen.
Well,
Come on now.
Do the floors reflect a clean space?
Well,
Do we buy into the notion that cleanliness is next to godliness?
Come on with it now.
Or do we just use stuff and use stuff until we just use stuff up? The rebuilding of the wall was done in a programmatic manner.
Come on.
Each family is identified in the scriptures with a specific area to rebuild. One built the sheep gate. Another family worked on the fish gate. There were families that worked next to them building another gate. The family of Shalom repaired the fountain gate. The Levites worked on the citadel of David. Nehemiah's sons worked on the tomb of David. And I say all this to say what? As determined by group leaders
groups.
back in March of 2016 to be exact.
That's right.
There was an understanding as follows. S1 and S9 are responsible for a dining hall every first
Call it out. Call it out.
third Saturday.
okay.
S2 is responsible for the Southern Regional Office every first and third Saturday, cleaning and maintaining.
Come on with it. Come on.
S3 and young adults are responsible for the shrine on the first and third Saturday. S5 is responsible for the Legacy Center, first and third Saturdays to maintain.
Okay.
S6 has a responsibility of the Red Room to maintain and keep in shape. And S7, the Maccabees are in charge of Founders Hall every Friday and daily general cleaning. A simple, basic plan to ensure our institutions reflect what black people should represent.
Come on.
Now, don't ask me how many times they did what they were supposed to do. I'm gonna leave that up to my wife to take care of it and Google it.
Maybe she has the answer.
But we say we love the Lord.
Come on with it.
We say we are a beacon, a shining example for black people. But we just don't shine floors or clean windows and empty trash and paint peeling walls.
Well,
We're going to try to get this thing right.
Come on.
February 11th. February 11th, Holy Hands on Holy Places.
Come on with it.
All church Kazi. Where we're going to clean out some of those eyesores that we just saw on the wall.
Amen.
So don't talk about how you love the church and then end up not being around.
Yeah.
Oh, Kazi.
Come on.
Show your love for our Jerusalem.
Well,
Now, you would think that everybody was in support of the rebuilding of the wall.
No.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. There were those that just, were getting over with the leadership that they had. And then they had built-in enemies that just couldn't stand to see them making any progress. Their natural adversaries, Tobiah, an Ammonite, Sanballat, a Hornite, they just dogged Nehemiah and all of them out when they were working on the wall, just laughing at them. This is what they said. Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. That's cold.
Let's go.
But you can't expect your enemies to wish you well.
No, you can't.
You better be ready for them to throw everything at you when you're trying to do something right. Reflect on the civil rights struggle that we petitioned to have our basic civil rights. And the white man kept saying, oh, black folks, just wait. Patient, be patient, it's coming. You're going to get your freedom in the by and by. Just be cool, it's coming. When they saw the walls being rebuilt, Tobiah and Sanballat began to come up with strategies and a plan where they wanted to kill Nehemiah and the builders. And the builders went into this plan. They had to take turns while they were rebuilding the walls. Some would be working and others would stand watch with their weapons to fight off any detractors. In 52 days, the walls around Jerusalem were restored.
well, all right.
52 days.
Amen.
A lot of us have no faith in black people and each other.
That's right.
Black folks ain't gonna do right. If it's built black, if it's built, it's gonna tilt. You know how we are, hard on ourselves. If a black man builds it, as Tobiah and them were saying, a fox can brush up against it and the wall will fall down.
Well, have mercy.
More troubling is what those that were left behind had to go through by the weak leadership. The walls had been in ruins for decades. And during this time, those left behind, they had leaders in place. However, the leaders knew that we got to take care of the taxes of the conquered, because we were conquered by another nation. But they went far above and beyond that. They had excess taxes on the people. Excess taking of crops.
Tell the story.
But that aside, rebuilding the walls was not their concern. We looked at the enemy, and the enemy is ourselves.
Oh, my Lord.
What did the people say to Nehemiah? We'll get someone to read Nehemiah 5, verse 1 through 5. What did the people cry out to Nehemiah?
Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others were saying, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. Still others were saying, we have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others.
Well, my Lord.
Amen.
Have mercy.
Just because you have the title of leader
Well,
does not translate into leading for the best interests of the people. Those in charge before Nehemiah came couldn't care less about the prosperity of Jerusalem.
Well,
They were more caught up in making sure that after the ruling power got their taxes, they would line their own pockets with overtaxation, illegal taking of property and goods,
That's right.
exploitation, and sex trafficking of their own people.
Have mercy.
Individualism and greed was priority over the people's needs. They had no shame. The walls were crumbling. They passed by them daily.
Come on.
Did they talk about a plan to buy some bricks to build the walls? No, that wasn't it. They were more busy making sure their own houses were decked out. That they had stockpiles of the best food.
Well,
That their children were all taken care of.
Well,
That they had tailor-made garments.
watch out.
That they had nice courtyards where they could wine and dine and play games. And all of this is financed on the backs of the ones that they are supposed to be in service to. How much you care for your church can be seen in where you place your church priorities,
well,
as opposed to your personal
well.
priorities.
All right, brother.
Before leaving, as I mentioned earlier, there were some spiritual concerns and some spiritual rebuilding that had to take place. The nation Israel seems, as we've learned throughout the course of their travels, have a propensity of intermingling with whoever is around them. And Ezra, on hearing how they were just marrying foreign women and had all these foreign wives and things, this is what he did. At this news, I rent my garments and clothes.
Well,
I tore hair from my head and from my beard. I sat down and was just overcome. Now, Ezra the repudiation of marrying foreign wives was not an indictment on the women that the nation Israel was marrying. It was more about preserving the lineage of the black nation Israel.
That's right.
As we mentioned, 10 tribes had already been dispersed throughout the world. If the bloodline could not be traced and maintained, the notion of a Messiah coming through the line of David would be lost forever. In order to have any hopes of being a nation, that those had taken on foreign wives had to give them up.
Well,
And they did, if we want to become a nation. Why do I bring this up? What does this mean?
Come on now.
This simply means, this means if we are to preserve black Christian nationalism,
all right.
our message, our theology cannot be integrated into any other theology.
Well, that's right.
We may not be a worldwide, all-encompassing religion, but that's okay. Jeramogi, our baby Ajiman, founded and built this church to serve a particular people,
Well,
black people,
that's right. Amen.
in a particular way. A way that would submerge our individualistic, destructive tendencies so that we could rebuild and restore black men and women to our rightful place as kings and queens and rulers.